Welcome to Daily Dose Reddit. To all Reddit travelers, what is your creepiest hotel story? My mom was traveling for work and sat next to a man, fellow business traveler, on the plane. They had a casual conversation and exchanged business cards. Later that evening she's in her hotel watching TV and gets a phone call from the front desk that her husband is here and they want to know if they can give him a key to the room. Turns out the creep on the plane was pretending to be her husband to try to get into her room. I was traveling out of the country right after finishing up a huge 5-day work event where I had about 10 hours of sleep total during the 5 days. I got to the motel, which is kinda run down and the carpet and blankets are damp, but I'm so exhausted I don't even really think about it. I fall asleep pretty much immediately at like 8 p.m. local time. At maybe 11 p.m. or so, I get a call from the motel phone saying there's been a complaint about noise. I tell them that's impossible, I've been sleeping. They ask me if maybe it's someone else in the room and I tell them no, I'm here alone so there's definitely no one else making noise. They ask me again if I'm sure I'm by myself and not causing any noise. I say yes again. Fall back asleep immediately. When I woke up and thought about it some more, I realize how weird the entire interaction was. There was absolutely no noise I could hear anywhere nearby and I don't know why the motel staff would need to clarify so many times that I was alone. Apparently they never called. So I assume it must have been someone calling the different rooms to see who was in the rooms and how many people. I've never been so glad to always use the extra latch chain lock. While in the Isles of Scotland, we stayed in a B&B. It was owned by a couple. The bedrooms were extremely well done and beautiful, but on everything there was signs to not touch. To use the shower, you would have to ask the couple and the internet ended at 11 p.m. The woman would also check on everyone at random times in the night. We would hear creeping in the hallway to make sure everyone was sleeping, and not doing any illegal things like using the internet. When we checked out of her B&B, she came into our room and said that we stunk, and opened the window to prove this and demanded for money immediately. Another traveler was kicked out of the B&B because the checkout time was 10 a.m., and they were forced to stand outside. She wouldn't even let them stay inside, in the thunderstorm while their taxi came. Another traveler had to use a check, we were in an isolated place, to pay for the room and she took their bags and wouldn't give them back. But on the way out, she asked everyone if they enjoyed their stay. Found a hotel in Yangon, Burma, the day we got there for pretty cheap. They mentioned the rates were low because maintenance was being done on several floors. We sleep fine, wake up and head to breakfast. At breakfast we met some Germans who had also stayed the night in our hotel. They said they had not slept well because during the middle of the night someone woke them up to move them from the floor they were on. We and the Germans found out later that they had been moved because they were on one of the levels reserved for maintenance, and part of the maintenance included gassing the rooms for bugs. During the middle of the night they were just going around the rooms shoving the gas nozzle or whatever under the doors and letting them run. Wound up killing the 2 people next to the Germans before they realized they'd accidentally booked people on that floor. We weren't on that floor thankfully, but it has always stuck with me how seemingly easy it could have been to have gotten mixed up in that. Family vacation. 1 a.m. My brother and I had just finished watching The Shining on TV. Neither of us had seen it before. We heard someone trying to open our door. No one else was supposed to have keys. Someone tried to swing open the door, but the hotel lock stopped them. They kept trying to open it multiple times, banging the door against the lock. After a few tries, they gave up. The hotel desk clerk accidentally entered the wrong room for their keycards. When I was 12, I was staying in a motel with my mom on a road trip. We were in the middle of nowhere in Texas at a motel that had a decent rating in our guidebook and was really cheap, so we went for it. In the middle of the night, the owner knocked on the door and told us we had to leave because he wanted the room for someone else. My mom was outside arguing with him while I was gathering our things, and I was terrified because I heard him start yelling. I looked out the window and saw about half a dozen bikers in vests appear out of nowhere, maybe a nearby room, and start confronting the owner. My mom came inside quickly and we watched them start harassing the guy, things like, "She's paid to be here. You're gonna let her stay tonight. We don't want to ever hear shit like this from you again." And the owner was saying things like, "I don't want any trouble." Everybody left fairly quickly and we didn't ever hear anything about it the next day at checkout. We weren't able to sleep very well because we were so shook up, but it was better than getting in the car again. In 1996, while air drying naked after a shower lying on my hotel bed in Beijing with the curtains drawn, I received a call demanding I put on clothes. A friend and I once stayed at a pretty fancy B&B for the night. The lady who owned it was absolutely lovely, but would appear out of nowhere. We'd be sitting alone in a large room with one doorway and suddenly she was in the room with us. Either this joint had secret doors or something really creepy was going on. She seemed to know things that we'd said or done as well. The thing that tripped us out the most was hearing someone trying to open our door during the night. She was super lovely and the building was beautiful, but we were relieved to check out the next morning. I arrive at a secluded, coastal hotel south of Marmaris, Turkey around 2 a.m. It had been a long day in Istanbul followed by a flight and long bus ride into Marmaris where I haggled with non-English speaking taxi drivers, who were not even aware that this small resort exists. When the taxi pulls up to the hotel, it's on fire. When the owner, standing out front, sees us, he opens the taxi door excitedly. "You come. I have nice room for you." I point out that the hotel is on fire, but he simply gestures and says, "Small fire. No problem. You come." I am utterly exhausted. I find myself following the owner into the hotel, stepping over fire hoses, waving away smoke, passing firefighters as they run up and down a very nice staircase. We pause at the second floor landing and the owner tells me, "See. Fire only on this side of hotel. This side no fire. You come." My exhaustion removes every ounce of common sense and I follow him to a room down the hall. The room is indeed fire-free. I quickly scan the "in case of fire" message on the back of the door, check the window escape, and promptly pass out with my gear and boots on. In the morning I awake, alive, wondering if I dreamt the entire thing. I go down the smoky stairs past the charred other side of the hotel. The owner is so happy to see me, still alive, that he eats breakfast with me. I went back a few years later and the hotel had fully recovered. Did the couchsurfing.com thing with a friend a few years ago. We are both big guys so typically feel safe everywhere we go. Show up at the house, 60-year-old guy opens the door while on the phone. He's only wearing sweatpants. He signals for us to enter. He continues his conversation and ends with an "I love you." He turns to us and says welcome, and apologizes for being on the phone. He starts talking about his GF, who he was talking with, and how she lives overseas. He mentions he has several GFs and boasts about being a ladies' man. He then starts to show us pictures. These girls looked like they were 14. While sliding through the pic he accidentally showed us one of their passports. This weirded us out a lot. We were early 20s and didn't really know what to do, so we said we were tired and wanted to sleep. He walked us to the room while rubbing his belly. Told us he would make breakfast in the morning. We decided to sleep the night, but leave before he woke up. My friend slept on the bedroom door so he couldn't sneak in. We got up super early and bolted. We got super weird vibes from the guy and just felt gross weird about the whole thing. Stayed in a B&B in Pennsylvania that seemed cute enough. They did have a wall of antique dolls in the main room but otherwise no signs of weirdness. That's until we were settled in the room. I noticed some scratches on the floor near a bookcase and after some inspection realized it was a secret door. When I asked the owner, who gave a creepy vibe, if it worked, he said yes and showed me that it opened to their office, which was a cluttered room with a computer and piles of crap. It had a lock on their side and when I asked if there was a lock on my side he smiled and said, "No." When I showed some concern that there was an unlockable entrance to my room that was camouflaged that they didn't tell me about, he just kept smiling. So that night no sex, fear of cameras, and I barricaded the fucking door and barely slept. When I was 12, my family took a vacation to Europe. At our hotel in Rome, there was this amazing indoor pool. And being a child of my age, I would have spent the entire vacation there if I could. During one such swimming excursion, some random gentleman, I think probably around 40-something, comes over to me and starts tickling my feet. My mother is with me, but is preoccupied with one of my other siblings. He speaks English as well and starts teasing me for being ticklish and telling me how I'm simply adorable. Through my giggles, I keep shyly asking him to stop. He doesn't, and just keeps teasing me and touching my feet and lower legs. This went on for maybe 2 minutes tops before my mom sees what's happening and goes into super protective mode and tells him to back the fuck off. I arrived late at a hotel for a business trip. Flight had a malfunction, so we had to land. They fixed it on the tarmac and we never deplaned. Room already paid for, confirmation number in hand, etc. I got there about 5 hours after I was supposed to be there. Of course, they gave away my room. I already wasn't happy from all the delays and I wasn't going anywhere. The event I was there for was in their hotel. I wanted my room. I was polite but resolutely firm. They did some scrambling and asked if I would consider a damaged room under construction. As long as the sheets are clean so I can go to bed, I don't care, was my reply. Mistake. The room they gave me was literally a crime scene. The case had been closed, so there was no legal issue to contend with, but someone had been killed, or nearly killed, not 100% sure, in that room. They had primed over the blood stains on the walls and ceiling but had only taped down semi-clear plastic over the pooled blood on the carpets. Multiple small holes in the walls had obviously been patched and sanded, but there were multiple small holes in the walls. They gave me a completely new bed and TV from on-site inventory, so I was comfortable, but, man, it was creepy as fuck. The creepiest part was the priming job. It was so obviously blood splatter. You could see where the person had been hit and where they fell. You could also see how they had tried to get up and where they had finally collapsed. Was in San Juan del Sur, Nicaragua last year. Massive spiders all over the room. Even woke up with a couple of little scorpions in my bed the first morning. Next night I'm sitting at the bar, drinking and chatting with a mate, feel a tickle on the back of my neck and think it's a mosquito or something. Brush the back of my neck and another motherfucking scorpion, this time way bigger, plops on the ground at my feet. Stared at it for a moment in shock, squealed like a girl, squashed it and kept drinking. In Mexico, my GF and I stayed a night in a hut in the jungle. No running water, no electricity. As we are from Central Europe, we are not used to dangerous wildlife, spider, scorpions, etc. There was a beautiful cenote nearby and at some point it rained like crazy. The daytime was amazing. The night not so much. In our hut was a bed with a mosquito net with huge holes in it. It was pitch black in the hut as we laid down and got comfortable trying to sleep. I felt a bit creeped out and decided to check the hut for insects with my phone's flashlight. Bad idea. There were hundreds of big spiders all over the walls and ceiling. Not the night's sleep I was hoping for. I had to wrap up like a mummy every piece of clothing we had with us. When I was about 4 years old, my family ended up staying at the Cedar Lodge Motel where Cary Stayner worked right before he murdered 4 women. My family drove to Yosemite, and it was a long drive for us, 3 kids all under the age of 7 plus 2 adults, and a fuck ton of mountains will do that. By the time we arrived at the motel, it was late, we were all cranky, and we couldn't wait to get out. But the moment we pulled in, something set my mom's teeth on edge and she insisted that we left and found another hotel, reservation or not. My mom has always had this like sixth sense and her gut has actually saved us a couple of times, but my dad was tired and convinced her to ignore her gut and stay for just the night, and the next morning we'd leave. I can remember my mom actually refusing to let go of our hands, making us stay right by her side as she kept looking around while checking in. To try and get her to relax, my dad suggested we go to the pool, thinking it would calm her down. Well, when we got there, there were no towels, so my mom called the front desk. The moment the man delivering towels arrived, my mom immediately grabbed us out of the water and rushed us back to the room. The man gave her the absolute creeps and she says there was just this feeling of pure evil when he looked at us. That night my mom and dad pushed the dresser in front of the door and had us all sleep in the same bed. The next morning, we left to go to another hotel, but my mom couldn't stop talking about how evil that motel was. About 2 months later, she and my dad were up late watching the news when they started reporting on a man who had murdered a woman and 2 young girls in Yosemite. Just as my mom began to say, "I bet it was at that motel," they showed Cary Stayner's face and said it occurred at the Cedar Lodge Motel. Carrie Stainer was the man who brought us our towels at the pool. We've never gone back to Yosemite and my mom is always insistent that we listen to our gut feeling and when every bone in your body is telling you something is wrong, GTFO. TLDR, we stayed at a motel where serial killer Carrie Stainer worked and my mom's gut told her he was a fucking creep. Thank you so much for watching.